What's going on, guys? It's Danny from Fantasy Stock Exchange here, bringing another installment of the weekly waiver wire series I run over here at the Fantasy Stock Exchange YouTube channel. I mean, we're going to be talking about Week 12 waivers. Isn't it crazy that we're already going into Week 12 of fantasy football, real NFL football? Heck, y'all Americans are celebrating Thanksgiving this Thursday. My Cowboys are playing this Thursday at 4:30. I mean, what a time to be alive. I mean, hopefully you guys are still in it, in the thick of your playoff push. You need a few guys that can help you get there down the stretch. A couple of these guys I'm going to go through today are definitely going to be able to do so. Good candidates to get you some wins in these high pressure, high intensity spots down these upcoming weeks. So yeah, similar to the real NFL. I mean, heck, there's already 11 weeks down from a season that was affected by COVID. We didn't know how everything would go. Well, you know what? It looks like we're finishing the season. Knock on wood right now. I'm just excited that football has made it this far with obviously a strucken down year affected by COVID throughout. So just grateful to be able to watch football every Sunday still, because I did not expect that to be the case. But anyways, talking about football, I mean, there were some really good standout performances in Week 11 that I'm going to be talking about today that can ultimately help you down the stretch. So, yeah, before we do that, though, can you hit the intro? Okay, so as I mentioned, we're going to start off with the quarterback position on this waiver show. And as I mentioned in the last couple of weeks, I'm going to keep these shows relatively shorter than they were at the beginning of the season. Obviously, they're not as many high impact difference makers as there was at the beginning of the season, but they're still fine, streamable type options for you this week. No superstars, if you will, but definitely really good depth options, and even guys that you can bid on to take away from opponents who are more desperate at the position than you. So we'll get into all of that. Let's start off with Derek Carr. He is currently owned in 36% of Yahoo fantasy football leagues. And I mean, his week 11 was a very optimistic showing if you were watching that game. Obviously, nobody expected, well, a lot of people didn't expect the Raiders to be as stingy with the Chiefs as we've seen. Like, these two meetings this year were fantastic games, very good showings from the Raiders. And little pat on the back, I did think the Raiders would play them tough. I actually had them winning that game outright as an upset, but they stuck around, so I'm pretty proud. You have to be proud if you're a Raiders fan in that showing. But anyways, glossing over the stats from that performance: 275 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, and 1 interception. Also contributed 6 rushing yards on 3 rushing attempts for a total of 22.6 points in default 4-point passing touchdown quarterback league. So week 12, his matchup is literally the holy grail of fantasy football quarterback matchups. As I mentioned, basically every week, whoever's playing against the Falcons, you can stream them. I mean, I could be playing against the Falcons and probably get you a 15-point week. I'll be honest here. That defense is just so bad against opposing quarterbacks this year. I mean, it's just insane when you think about it. So overall, Derek Carr stepped up in a relatively tough matchup against the Chiefs. Again, they're top 7 or 8 team against the quarterback position this year. I mean, almost 23 fantasy points, again, to a team that gives up the 8th fewest, actually written down here, 8th fewest points to the quarterback position. It's just really good. I mean, you don't expect that type of ceiling from Derek Carr, but he performed for you. And in a much easier matchup this week against the Falcons, he is set to be a quarterback one, in my opinion. Like, if you're streaming this guy, I would expect top 12 type production. I mean, the Falcons, just get this context, right? The Falcons are giving up 29 points per game to the quarterback position and just allowed quarterback Taysom Hill to accumulate 24.42 points against them. I mean, if you're playing against this guy in an opponent's tight end spot, good luck to you, because they probably beat you. Anyways, you're going to have to start Derek Carr in the quarterback spot, unfortunately. But heck, if he's anywhere close to that 24.42 type production we saw from Taysom Hill, I mean, you're definitely happy with that type of production now. I'm not going to say that should be the mark that you should set for Carr this week, but if he gives you anything 18, 20 plus points, I mean, for a guy that you're going to be picking up basically for free off the waivers, that's a great option. So overall, in my opinion, I think he's set and ready to build off this performance against the Chiefs on Sunday Night Football. And in my opinion, lock down top 12 to 14 type production in this game against the Falcons. And I think that's even being relatively held down because, again, as I mentioned, the Falcons are just such a bad defense against the quarterback position that I don't care if you don't think Carr's a great real life or great fantasy football quarterback. He's going to put up numbers because the Falcons are relatively decent against the run and can't stop a nosebleed to save their lives against the pass. So talking about FAAB potential, again, it's pretty redundant at this type of the year, but you get this guy for a few bucks. You need a quarterback stream for the week. I'm definitely fine with doing that for Carr because I do think he's going to be able to perform in this matchup. Honorable mentions at this position are going to be Taysom Hill, quarterback from the New Orleans Saints, 43% at Denver. I mean, he's got rushing upside, if you will. He's not really a quarterback. I'm going to keep saying that because I don't think he's going to be a long-term quarterback. But what he does with you, or what he does for you in terms of what he does with his legs, ultimately are going to be able to do fine against a Denver defense that has been pretty stingy overall. But a guy in Taysom Hill who, if he gets to start again, you should expect between 40, 50 type rushing yards in this game. He could definitely give you some mid quarterback 2 type value in this game. Teddy Bridgewater, quarterback from the Carolina Panthers, goes up against the Minnesota Vikings. We were able to see that Andy Dalton and the Cowboys receivers were really able to have their way with this secondary. So Teddy Bridgewater, coming back from an injury, I do think can step back into the fantasy limelight. Heck, this guy was a top 10 quarterback. Obviously, he didn't play in this past game, but he's been a top 10 quarterback this year. So definitely living up to the expectations if you had drafted him as a streamer late in your drafts. And then Kirk Cousins on the flip side of that matchup goes up against the Carolina Panthers, 42% owned for Cousins. I mean, we've seen the trio that you have there between Cousins, Jefferson, obviously Thielen is actually with COVID, so that's something to monitor. Otherwise, Cousins would be higher on this list. But even Irv Smith Jr., Dalvin Cook, Kyle Rudolph, I do think that they can supplement production for Cousins and give you some decent quarterback 2 type value. So anyways, Carr, top streamer. And then the honorable mentions being Taysom Hill, Teddy Bridgewater, and Kirk Cousins, as mentioned. So let's get into the main waiver of this week. The main news that would affect your lineups down the stretch, in my opinion, and that's going to be Gus Edwards, running back from the Baltimore Ravens, currently at 28% ownership in Yahoo Fantasy Football League. So his week 11, not impressive. 3 attempts, 6 yards, and didn't have a single target in this game. And his week 12 matchup is almost as hard as it can be. He goes up against the Pittsburgh Steelers on the road, who go up the second least points to the position. But the reason why he is a guy you want to spend all your FAAB on is with the recent news of Mark Ingram and J.K. Dobbins being added to the Baltimore Ravens COVID/reserve list. He's the only back left available for this team. Aside from Justice Hill, who hasn't really been getting any burn whatsoever with this team, Gus Edwards is set to get a workhorse type role for a Ravens rushing offense that has been really good overall this year. So the news of Dobbins and Ingram missing at least this week, possibly next week on a short week against the Cowboys. Again, this is news where the Ravens have 2 games in the next 9 days. Okay. If these guys don't get cleared anytime soon, Gus Edwards is going to be a volume RB2 at least for the next 2 weeks. And when you're talking about FAAB potential at this current point in the year, with all the desperation that comes at the running back position, getting a guy who you know is going to get you at least 15 plus touches, which is what Gus Edwards is going to be, that's all your FAAB. That's all your FAAB. I don't care what you have left. Even if you have to get him just to block another playoff type team from getting him, I would be fine with bidding all my FAAB here. So if you're talking about it, I mean, obviously the matchup against the Steelers is tough. We all know they are a tough defense, but the Gus Bus was able to actually shred them in their last meeting a few weeks ago. And if you're able to grit your teeth, put him in your lineup, he gets a decent floor because of the volume this week. You should see a much better outlook for next week. Where he actually goes up against the Dallas Cowboys. So if Dobbins and Ingram miss multiple weeks, which is what I personally expect being on the COVID list will entail, given the short week, I mean, you're getting a free RB2 at minimum top 18 to 20 back for the next 2 weeks in what's ultimately going to be the playoff clinching set of games, if you will, for your season. So I'm all in on Gus Bus. Pick him up. At the very minimum, he's going to get you a win this week. So definitely fine with bidding whatever you have left in your FAAB budget on this guy. Honorable mention is going to be James White, running back from the New England Patriots, 40% owned. He actually goes at home against the Arizona Cardinals. The thing with James White, obviously, with the news of the Rex Burkhead injury, he's feared to have torn his ACL. I mean, this was always James White's receiving role, but with Rex Burkhead out, who was actually the only other running back in that game or in that backfield capable of contributing in the receiving game. So Michelle's a grinder, Damian Harris is a grinder. Realistically, the only type receiving talent they have left in the backfield is going to be James White. So especially in PPR leagues, if James White is still available for you, I'm definitely fine with putting a bid in on him. Cam Akers, 31% owned at Tampa. I'm currently recording this basically right during the game, so we'll see what happens, but I'm definitely fine with putting a super cheap bid on Akers and stashing him down the stretch. If anything were to happen to Henderson, I mean, this guy could absolutely win you leagues down the stretch given how much the team runs the ball. And then finally, similar situation, Alex Madison, 33% owned. He goes up against the Carolina Panthers. This isn't really a play for this week. Obviously, we know if Dalvin Cook is healthy, Dalvin Cook gets the rock. But the thing is, we've seen multiple times over the last few weeks, Dalvin Cook goes down, and you're like, oh my God, is he hurt? Is Madison coming in? We don't know what happens. He misses a couple plays and then hops back in the game. I'm just, especially if you're a Dalvin Cook owner, this is a guy that you need down the stretch. Because if one game, Dalvin Cook just decides not to go back in, or if he's actually hurt, like significantly, Madison could be a decent league winner down the stretch, given how much this team has shown commitment to the ground game. So those are the honorable mentions being White, Madison, and Cam Akers. And then the top overall waiver claim has to be Gus Edwards overall in the week. You bid your FAAB. You hope you get him. Plain and simple with there. So let's go on to the wide receiver position. And I'm going to start off with Tim Patrick, wide receiver from the Denver Broncos, currently at 21% ownership. Now, I know Michael Pittman would actually be the number one for me, but I'm not going to ring your ears 2 weeks in a row on him. If he's still available, that kid from Indianapolis, he is the alpha wide receiver one there. You go pick him up. I just didn't want to make him the main biscuit of the video, if you will, yet again. So I'm going to talk about Tim Patrick because he does deserve enough respect to have his own segment on this show. So glossing over his week 11 stats, 8 targets, 5 receptions, 119 receiving yards. Week 12 matchup, he goes up against the New Orleans Saints, who give up the 13th most points to the wide receiver position. So if you're actually looking at the outlook of Tim Patrick, I mean, he's totaled 6+ targets in 4 of the last 5 games. And in that stretch, he's either gotten over 60 receiving yards or a touchdown in 4 of the last 5 games as well. So I just think you're going to see continued involvement from him in an offense that slings the ball all over the yard. I mean, Drew Lock is throwing the ball 40 times every fucking game. Tim Patrick's going to get his fair share of meat on the bone. He's going to get his targets. And ultimately, I mean, he looks to be their consistent possession threat on the offense, if you will. I mean, obviously, you got the speed with Hamler, the slot, route running ability of Jerry Jeudy, and the stretching ability of Noah Fant. Tim Patrick, with the absence of Courtland Sutton, has really been their possession type receiver. So down the stretch, with that role, giving Drew Lock a guy he can really trust in clutch situations, I think he offers you wide receiver 3, type 4 value, and you could plug him into your flex at any given point. And given the need for security and depth down the stretch, given the number of bodies that have gone down in fantasy football, his value has really gone up down the stretch. So if you're talking about FAAB, I mean, throw a tenner on him, see if you get him, because I really do think he can be a solid wide receiver 4 specifically. You have to lean on him as a low-end wide receiver 3, 35 or so range. I'm fine with it there as well. But, yeah, if you have to plug him with your flex, I would feel a lot more confident than I would have of him even a few weeks ago. So really like Tim Patrick. Obviously, the honorable mentions I mentioned. Michael Pittman Jr., if he is available for you, he is a wide receiver 3 for the rest of the season. I mean, no questions asked whatsoever. I absolutely love this kid. Just didn't want to make a known show again for him. And then I'm also going to talk about Denzel Mims, another rookie wide receiver. I mean, he looked good again. He's been getting a lot of targets these last few weeks. And to me, he's really shown himself to be a consistent target for Joe Flacco. So we'll see how that dynamic has changed once Sam Darnold comes back. But Denzel Mims has really popped down the stretch. And for a team that's 0-10, you may as well see what you got with a second-round rookie draft pick for what you believe to be is going to be Trevor Lawrence at the helm next year. See what you got in Mims. And then Nelson Aguilar, wide receiver from the Las Vegas Raiders. As I was mentioning with Carr, he really outperformed expectations. Well, Nelson Aguilar has been consistently excellent down the stretch. Now, his target totals haven't really been consistent, but he's been one of the most efficient receivers in the league thus far. oddly enough, because he was very inefficient with the Eagles. And just so happens, as soon as he leaves Carson Wentz, Derek Carr makes him a very efficient receiver. Go figure. But anyways, I mean, he can string a few performances for you. You could spot him in as a desperation flex. I definitely think Nelson Aguilar can keep contributing in that type of role for you. So talking about a wide receiver 4 or 5 down the stretch, I definitely think Aguilar can do that for you and be a confident depth piece for your teams. Anyways, let's go on to the tight end position, where the biggest crapshoot in fantasy football. We're going to be talking about Robert Tonyan, tight end from the Green Bay Packers, currently at 46% ownership. His week 11, really good game. I mean, 5 targets, 5 receptions, 44 receiving yards, and a touchdown. And his week 12 matchup figures to be very good, going up against the Chicago Bears, who gave up the 8th most points to the tight end position. And I know when you hear the name Robert Tonyan, he has not been the most consistent option at the tight end position per se. I mean, his range of outcomes this year have ranged from 1 point against the San Francisco 49ers to where he had a 30.8 half PPR performance against the Atlanta Falcons in week 4. So his range of outcomes is huge. But in my opinion, when you're looking at a position that's such a volatile position, extremely volatile in the tight end position, when you're talking about guys in this low tight end 1, top 15 streaming type range, give me the guy who has good upside. And for me, Robert Tonyan, out of a lot of these streaming type options, offers a lot of upside compared to the other options in this range. So if you're looking at it, I mean, the Bears are absolutely locked down to the receiver position. We saw Jefferson and Thielen have their way a little bit, but relatively for the rest of the year, those corners, that secondary has been very good against opposing wide receivers. However, they've been susceptible to giving up points to the tight end position, as I mentioned, 8th most points in the league. So ultimately here, the defense is going to pay attention to Devontae Adams. He's still going to cook, as we already know, but maybe he doesn't have 12 for 200 and 2 touchdowns. Maybe he has 7 for 90 and a touchdown. And if that's the case, I mean, Tonyan has shown, although it's not really been consistent, he's been the number 2 option, number 3 when you consider Aaron Jones as well, in the passing game. And for a team that has been susceptible to giving up points down the middle of the field, I think Tonyan could definitely have a game more suitable for his ceiling, other than the 1 floor we saw a couple weeks ago against the 49ers. So talking about honorable mentions at this position, we're going to be talking about Dalton Schultz, tight end from the Dallas Cowboys. 21% ownership, actually goes up against the Washington football team on Thanksgiving. So if you need a spot, he's definitely proven to be a valuable tight end option in a relatively barren position. And then Jimmy Graham, tight end from the Chicago Bears, currently at 38% ownership. Yes, he had a 0 prior to his bye week, but I definitely think he can bounce back against a Green Bay Packers defense that has relatively struggled these last few weeks. So, at a position that really has much else. If you can get a guy like Jimmy Graham for super cheap, put him in your lineup, I definitely think he can give you some, we'll say, top 16, 18 type value. And at the tight end position, realistically, you just look for guys who can maybe score a touchdown. And Jimmy Graham has proven over his career that he can score touchdowns, especially in a revenge game type setting against his former team in the Green Bay Packers. So anyways, that's off the tight end position. I'm going to mention a few defense/special team streamers for this week that can get you the win in that part of your lineup. Going to mention the New York Giants actually going up on the road against the Cincinnati Bengals offense that recently just lost their starting quarterback in Joe Burrow. So we'll definitely see how that game goes, but it's going to be a struggle with Ryan Finley being able to try to chuck the rock in what I ultimately believe is going to be against a talented Giants defense. I mean, they've been playing their fucking butts off all year, and against Ryan Finley, I just don't see a way that really eases up. This is going to sound weird because this is a defense that you really you target opposing offenses against. But man, with the way the Eagles have been playing on offense in terms of turnovers, I'm actually going to say the Seattle Seahawks defense. I mean, it's disgusting. They are a very bad real-life defense, but Carson Wentz is good for 3 turnovers a game. And 3 turnovers a game is going to get you points on the defensive end. So I don't care if it's ugly. You probably don't want to watch this game if you have the Seattle Seahawks defense, but I do think they can nip the butt with a few turnovers this weekend. Let me just crack a beer while I say that. And finally, sir, we're going to mention a defense that really surprised me these last 2 weeks. Actually, I mean, you could pretty much look at it on either end. But the Thanksgiving matchup between the Cowboys and the football team should be ugly. I mean, it should be turnovers on both ends. I do think realistically, Alex Smith, if he's going to keep chucking the ball 45, 50 times a game, I mean, he's going to be bound to turn the ball over. I know my defense hasn't recently turned the ball over a ton. But I mean, heck, if Donovan Wilson keeps playing the way he showed against the Vikings, I mean, I definitely think he can make a few plays on the ball this week. I mean, Cowboys actually showed signs of life on defense this week, so we'll see if that can continue on Thursday. And then vice versa on the other side of the matchup. I mean, the Washington football team's front should be able to dominate this Cowboys offensive line. I know they did well against the Vikings, but overall, this has really been a weak spot for the Cowboys this year, their offensive line. And Washington's pass rush is just ferocious. Just look what it did to poor Joe Burrow last week. I mean, before I continue, let's just hear thoughts and prayers for Joe Burrow. I mean, that injury is devastating. It's horrific. Hopefully this guy can return to full strength for next year. If you guys made it this far in the video, make sure you go comment prayers for Joe Burrow down below. And also, if you made it this far in the video, we're basically wrapped up overall on the top waivers this week. Make sure you go hit that like button. It really helps us get recommended in the YouTube algorithm. You know how hard it is to really establish on this platform. But with your guys' support, constant support, what we've been seeing, I mean, we get a lot of feedback from you guys, DMs, comments. Appreciate the support you guys have been showing. Another way to do that as well is to leave the like button. And if you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button. But I'm going to get out of here. I will see you guys on the, basically we're going to see you guys on the Thursday night live stream prior to, actually, Thursday night live stream. It's Thursday morning live stream because it's Thanksgiving, y'all. 3 games. Are you guys ready for some jam-packed Week 12 Thanksgiving football? I hope you are. All-American's going to be eating your turkey, having a good time. I'm going to be in Canada just fucking having the same time without the turkey. But anyways, peace out, y'all. See you Thursday morning.